Revelation. It's a live real quick. This is the makeup for that joint that fucking failed last time. It's talking about the capitalists capitalizing, doing their capitalism thing or whatnot. It seems like, some people have been talking about people like the Jay-Z's of the world and the Killer Mikes or whatever, promoting black capitalism, financial literacy. People have been talking about them scrambling because some of these motherfuckers with money see the writings on the wall. But honestly, what we have to remember is there's a large difference between the petty bourgeois and capitalists. The capitalists are the ones that own the means of production. Jay-Z doesn't own the means of production. Jay-Z's money can go like that. Killer Mike, none of these dudes own the means of production. Even that one billionaire dude that that paid for a bunch of people's loans at college. I forget his name, but I think he's a billionaire, but even him. Like, the position that they're in is just in a petty bourgeois position. They don't own the means of production because all of that shit was set in stone way before these men walked the earth. In that, if you look at the progression of capitalism, if you look at the progression to get to capitalism, everything recapitulates it. Like, chattel slavery recapitulates capitalism. Like, something to reconnect with y'all want. Is it? All right, here we back. And we live. Yeah, all of that was capitalism before capitalism. So, the idea that you getting some money is putting you in the same position as, say, like an Elon Musk or like one of the Emiratis or whatnot, it's not realistic. But what these folk want to do is they want to put themselves in advantageous positions. So when, the capitalists eventually turn on them, which they will, they want to at least be able to suckle at the teeth a little bit, lick some boots. Because when you figure, like, what financial literacy is, the idea of knowing how to use your money, you kind of naturally know that, but like to better, use your money in the sense of paying your bills on time, being able to afford your rent and afford these things. That understanding of money is shit that you're going to understand just naturally being in a capitalistic society. But the financial literacy of understanding why you won't ever be a capitalist and why you need to end capitalism, that's the financial literacy I think a lot of people are ignoring. The understanding that, I heard on a podcast where dudes were like, I think, and people have said this before, I think they don't show people how to be entrepreneurs and how to run businesses when they in, regular school or whatnot. Like, they're not really looking out for the people to be like their own boss. It's like, yeah, exactly. They want you to be a worker. And everybody knows that. So if you understand that, then you also understand why when you get a couple dollars in your pocket, you're not a capitalist. Like, you just petty bourgeois. You're just somebody with a couple dollars in your pocket. Because you don't have money, you have bills. People who are really sitting with wild chicken, they don't even spend it for real. Like, they just have bills. Like, the people who are spending their money, they just have bills. People who actually have who actually own the means of production, they don't even spend money. They work off IOUs, like debt and you. Like, you're their capital. So, somebody like Jay-Z, because he's just the greatest example right now, because he's front-facing, because he's supposed to be the ambassador for black people. Him talking about, it's not about how much money, the money that you get don't play into your morality. Yes, it does. why wouldn't it? What the fuck are you, like, what do you mean? If you are someone that is seeking financial stability, that's cool, whatever. Everybody's trying to be able to pave the way for themselves and their family and be able to, live within this capitalist system until there's a revolution. But if you are someone that thinks you need to have $1 billion, that's a moral strike. Like that's immoral. Like that's an ignoble thing to do. And the idea that, does the money in my pocket, does that question my morality? Like, what if Jay-Z, what if I only got $999,000? Am I good? Like, no. You're missing the point of it all. When you are someone positioned within this capitalistic system and you are making monies to a point where you can even say that out of your mouth, that means you are already at the point of heavy exploitation of the people who are working, of the people that are a part of the class of people that work. You aren't the proletariat. You aren't the working class people, the people that work. You are petty bourgeois. You are somebody who is only a snap of the fingers away from being back to where you. I think because of the maybe it's because of the weather. All right, there we go. So you're trying to stay in line with the nonsense. So when it comes to people like Jay-Z, people like Roland Martin, Roly-Poly, Boyce Watkins, they're trying to sell the dream that capitalism is for all, when it isn't, and it never has been. Because the only reason the idea of capitalism is big in, predominantly black spaces, as far as get money, yada, 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 it's because of Richard Nixon. Like, Richard Nixon is the godfather of black capitalism. Because the point of us chasing capitalism is so that we don't chase revolution. Because if you're trying to get money to subsequently pay bills, you don't got time to devise a plan to topple the system. So the idea that, back to the Jay-Z dude, that we're supposed to be out here chasing after chicken because they don't want us to be like, no, they do. Like, capitalists very much want you to get as much money as you possibly can. Because that means you're going to be exploiting other people. That means you're going to be working into the system and giving them exactly what they want. So even this thought that if we all just get money, we'll be all right. It's like, that doesn't even make sense when you say it without thinking about it. Because if you say if we all get, how are we getting this money? Who's working for us to get this money? What are we doing to get this money? How do we maintain this money? Because just because you have money, you still need to have more money. Because all you have is bills. As long as there's things for you to have to pay for, like, again, the sick-ass term of cost of living, there's not much that you can possibly say and or do to change what money is supposed to be used for in a revolutionary sense. There is no revolutionary aspect of money. It wasn't made for that. That's why, again, the idea of black capitalism is a thought by Richard Nixon and the like. And Richard Nixon is Mr. Watergate, Mr. The Plumbers. If you don't know what Watergate is, obviously Nixon was scrambling to spy on his Democratic opponents during election season or whatnot. And it was also because of as far as the Plumbers, because of the Pentagon Papers. If you don't know who the Plumbers are, you can Google it, or you can look up that Woody Harrelson movie about the Plumbers, where it was a former CIA agent and a former FBI agent that were doing a bunch of shady shit to plug up leaks. That's why they were plumbers, to plug up leaks within the U.S. government to make sure shit like the Pentagon Papers wouldn't come out. And then that turned into them stealing papers out of, that Watergate scandal to spy on fucking Richard Nixon's political opponents, which then, even though it wasn't directly connected, but still was connected because Richard Nixon's face of empire operated in COINTELPRO, which then led later on, because that was 1971, 1972, with the fight of the century, the Muhammad Ali fight, where during that fight, in Pennsylvania, the citizens the commission that was watching the CIA, they were a radical group of white folk. They were nicknamed the commission. They were going after information in regards to sick shit that the U.S. government was doing as far as COINTELPRO and all that, because at the time people heard about it but they didn't believe it was real. They exposed it. The commission exposed it during that fight of the century, that Muhammad Ali fight. But all of that is tied to Richard Nixon, who was the godfather of black capitalism. Even this wild understanding of what it could be and would be to get money. The people that are telling you to get money are telling you to own businesses, be an entrepreneur, black-owned business this, black-owned business that. Roland Martin, indirectly explained the whole game plan in that when he was, I guess, beefing with the Breakfast Club or some shit, where he was like, there's black-owned media and there's black-targeted media. And he said that the Breakfast Club is black-targeted media. They don't own that shit. They just do things and speak on topics that they look through, research and development, through research, just straight research, that they see that these are topics that black folk are going to want to be keen to pick up on. These are the things that they're going to want to listen to. So that's black targeted media. And then black owned media is supposed to be like Roland Martin, where he runs his station or whatnot, but he's still taking money from white people because he doesn't own a whole network, in the sense of, if Roland Martin were to be taken off YouTube or taken off of any other platforms, then he can just make his own internet. That's not happening. But the funny thing about being black-owned media or black-targeted media is that in the mainstream, it's still the same thing. Roland Martin and the Breakfast Club still push the same nonsense. The Breakfast Club still got DJ, what the fuck is that man's name? Envy on there, and him and his homeboy was, he said he wasn't a part of it, was selling people bad loans or whatever the fuck they was doing. But this idea of entrepreneurship in a capitalist society, who's the workers then, right? Because through the idea of black capitalism, you're naturally going to be anti-union because you run a business, and the way businesses are run within this society, there is no ethics. There's a dialectical space between mom and pop, self-run, keeping it together, small, tight-knit thing, to big corporation, bought out, doing bullshit, and you kind of teetering, fighting over, but once that shit synthesizes, the answer is going to be capitalism, because you won't, as the mom and pop, survive within the system because you aren't supposed to. That's not what. If you want to, nickel and dime within the system, sure. But within a capitalist system, the point is to scale up. So what are we really doing? Like, what's the games really being played? The Jay-Z's of the world telling you, they're looking at capitalism as a new N-word and all this other nonsense. They're doing that because they're trying to get you to be a worker for them. Because they ultimately want to be capitalists, but they won't ever be. Black petty bourgeois, they're black by look, not actual association of blackness. And they aspire to be capitalists. They're chasing after you tooth and nail to get you to give in to this idea. They aren't effective in regards to actually making a better society for anybody, or for the people that, especially for the people that they claim that they're fighting for. So, for shits and giggles, how AI is used, right? As far as like how the large language models, the generative AI, all that shit is bullshit. It's destroying potable water, like water period, destroying the ecosystem, causing the ecosystem death, fucking up a lot of things in the future in regards to like what the workspace is gonna look like, and it's making for a society that is built upon the idea that the only way to survive is to exploit. Because essentially that's what, when you think about the fact, as far as just using Jay-Z as just a motif, when you think about the fact that that man is known to exploit people to get to where he is, the fact that there's grown-ass men that call him Hove, like, that he wants you to call him God, to get all trippy, on your money, in God we trust. The point is, capitalists want you to believe in the almighty dollar. They want you to believe in that. That is why Richard Nixon and the like created black capitalism. They don't want you to be revolutionaries. They're cool with you marching in the streets a little bit because they know eventually they're going to buy out whoever's the face of that. Eventually you're going to be, wearing blue Patagonia sweater vests and writing novels and doing talks and shit like that. Because everybody within these spaces has a price. They aren't true activists. They aren't true organizers. They are opportunists. They were frustrated about something, saw an opportunity to capitalize on their frustration, and so they did that. And they on the back end might still be talking cash shit about, we gotta fight for this, we gotta protest that, let's boycott Target. It's like, fam, first and foremostly, are you an American of black nationality? Do you think black and whites can exist in the same nation without exploitation of black people, even if we should, why not aim to have our own nation? I live in America. I'm not American in the sense that I don't subscribe to that ideology. But in regards to, there is no way for there to be a separate nation within a nation. Like that, they've already literally tried to do that. Like the New African Movement, like initially they tried to make Oklahoma a place for all African people, which made absolutely no sense because that was like a few years after the Trail of Tears. Like this idea of separation and separatism is not going to ever work, because if you don't own the means of production, then that means you damn sure don't have an army, and then that means you damn sure don't have any other influence outside of just being mad about shit. Like the problem isn't let's not be next to each other. The problem is the ideology of it all. It's not a people, it's a thought process. Because you can get rid of as many people as you want to. But if you're thinking fucked up, that's what it is. It's just like, it's as simple as understanding, seeing a picture of someone lynched. You'll see grown adults, and then you'll see children there smiling. Those children don't know any better. But those kids are going to grow up to be screwed up because that's what they were taught. I mean, a breakaway nation taking land for the U.S. and like India and Pakistan. Yeah, no, that's still not going to work because India and Pakistan still fight. When the fact that Britain took India, they took Hindustan, they took India and split it into two places when it was supposed to be split into three. Khalistan has still been fighting to try to have its own nation. Who else? Kashmir wants to be sovereign from both, and Pakistan and India both fight to make sure that it's a revolving door. Like, you can't. The whole thing of India in and of itself is a prime example of why that doesn't work. Because all those people there were all just from Hindustan. And then you had people who were Christian, you had people who were Hindu, you had people who were Muslim. Then when Britain, as British Mandate India, was like, yeah, all right, war's over or whatever. Our funds are kind of running low. Let's move on to something else. Let's split this bitch up. They were like, okay, we're going to make a Muslim nation, which was supposed to be Pakistan. We're going to make a Hindu nation, which was supposed to be India, but that didn't really make any sense. And then Khalistan, they was like, can we have our own thing? And then Kashmir was like, hey, can we have our own thing? It was like, yeah, sure. And then once that shit happened, no, it didn't happen. Like, they are not under Britain anymore, and they can all coexist, unlike if they were in the same nation. They still operate through Britain, though. Like, that's just like saying France doesn't have any influence in the Congo, when it does. Britain still has influence in India. You can tell that Britain and all of them have influence in India because look who Modi, look who he is subservient to. Like, it's very much, there is no liberated nations under capitalism. Everybody is just as free as they're allowed to be. So even when you look at something like India, for example, it is still a nation that needs other places. It is still a nation that directly feuds with Pakistan, directly feuds with China. So much so that, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a fight at the border between, I think it was between India and China, or was it India and Pakistan? I think it was India and China, where it's a demilitarized zone. So they were fighting each other with fucking metal poles. So it's not a matter of, like, can you survive or make a nation for yourself under tyranny? Because you can't. That's the point. Because that's essentially like imagining, if we were to just, even in a fantastical way, imagining if Thanos controlled the planet. Like, he snapped his fingers, he got his halves. France has influence in West Africa because they never truly decolonized. Even India and other nations can industrialize to control their resources to break free like China has. China is an older nation and is also owns this means of production. It's never really needed anybody else. I mean, it dealt with colonization from Japan, but that's why to this day them two don't really get along as much as people think they do. But like China and India are two totally different things in that regard. China never had to deal with what India and Pakistan and Khalistan had to deal with. China's direct enemy to its sovereignty was either fighting within China and or, for the most part, a lot of its life, Japan. And then when that shit died out, then China was left to its own devices. It was working with Russia, then split from working with Russia, and then all the other shit. Nevertheless, it just really all comes down to the point is that there is absolutely no way that anybody can see a future for a liberated people thinking that it is just separating oneself from the thing. Because it's even like imagining that bricks by itself is changing the world. Bricks by itself, China was broken apart by all the European nations like a small. But China again. The main problem of China was fucking Japan. Yes, you had Britain with Hong Kong and shit like that, and you had other English countries, but their main enemy through it all was Japan. Like, because even Japan and Britain worked together. So the idea of by your line of thinking, why should Palestinians fight back since, and at the end of the day, they would just become like... That's not the same line of thinking. That those two things are absolutely diametrically opposed to each other. Palestinians are literally fighting over land that they've lived in for centuries, and they're trying to not be colonized. Those two things are absolutely not the same thing. China separating itself from Britain and separating itself from Japan and being able to do its own thing and working with those people on a contractual basis is not the same through the means of West Germany, through the means of France, Britain, and North America to then try to get their own sovereignty back. That's not the same thing. Those two things are not the same thing. China did not have to do what Palestinians are doing right now. Like from the year 1800 to right now, China didn't have to do what the Palestinians are doing from the year 1800 to right now. Yeah, that doesn't make it, because what the fuck is a black American? What is American? Like, what does that actually mean? Because black was given to you by white people, so what does American mean? No, because getting a nation does what? What does that mean? Like this place right now, wherever you are, is as African as where you would be if you were in Africa. Like, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean? No. I know that's what I'm saying. What does that mean? If we've gone through this, we've seen the process of the New African movement. We've seen the process of they literally trying to get land in Oklahoma. The perfect example of why it doesn't make any sense is that there was an actual movement to get land in Oklahoma for Africans to live. That was only years after the fucking Trail of Tears. It just shows the difference. Not the difference. It shows the reasoning of you can't possibly have liberation under tyranny. Like, we live in a global society. As much as people don't feel that way, we damn sure do. Not to say that what I eat makes somebody else shit, but to say that if we live within global capitalism, then we live within a global society. That movement never broke free from the USA. And then it's like, even looking at, for instance, Liberia. When they had the American Colonization Society, a little bit before the Emancipation Proclamation, something that Abraham Lincoln and a lot of abolitionists and some freed Africans were all for. They were like, hey, we don't want you African people here. We already stealing this land in America. We don't want to make space for you. How about we just send you somewhere else? Liberia is one of the places that was never actually formally colonized by Europe. It was actually like some kind of new age neo-colonized by Europe through Africans. Because what they did is they took Africans from here that they stole from West Africa, sent them to Liberia to colonize Liberia. So then you had a situation where you had Africans from here fighting Africans in Liberia over whose land it was. There were indigenous Liberians fighting Africans from here. So then that's when you had mixed Africans over there who were taking much of the political positions there in Liberia. Liberia has a wild history. Like, Liberians themselves, when they wrote their constitution, they mirrored it after America. The global system may stay the same, but with our own nation. There is no such thing as you may be not be. So there is create socialism in one nation. There is no such thing. A social democracy is just a democracy. Sock dim socks are just enlightened centrists who are just conservatives. Like, it's just the same thing. So, like, again, the idea of trying to carve out a little space under tyranny does nobody any good. The greatest example, Liberia. That pretty much, honestly, that's a perfect example of it. Liberia. The American Colonization Society, sent a bunch of Africans to a place they weren't from and said, you live here now. Those same Africans, whether it was mixed Africans as far as like quote unquote mulatto Africans and just straight Africans, fighting over who was going to have political power in Liberia against indigenous Liberians. the Africans that weren't from Liberia that took over Liberia then created a whole democracy mirrored after the one in America. Like they wrote their constitution off of the one in America. So the issue is not finding and carving out a space, because that same logic is saying like all we need to do is just get. Doing a capitalism is not going to change. Doing a capitalism is not going to change the material conditions of everybody. Like, feeling like we can carve out a piece of land is, again, essentially the same thing as saying if we just do capitalism better, we'll be all right. That's just not how it works. Jay-Z is as wrong as Abraham Lincoln was as fucked up for being a part of the American colonization society. Jay-Z is as wrong for saying, oh yeah, we just need to do capitalism and Killer Mike and the rest of them. There is no way for a people who are colonized to then think I can just make a small colony. You can't make an intra-colony. That doesn't work. Like that's like I lived in New York City. That's like thinking that Chinatown isn't New York. It damn sure is. It's just there's a predominantly Chinese people that live in Chinatown, but it's still New York City. But with all that being said, I need to edit this shit and head out. So I appreciate you guys. I'll holla. How do I turn this shit off? Nope. Doing it wrong. Nope. Still doing it wrong.